Imagine for a moment you're in 1989 Miami. What would you do? Go to the beach? Hang out at a bar? Go on a violent rampage against every underworld crime syndicate at the behest of strange phone calls? Well, if you thought that third one was relatable, maybe seek some help and then give 2012's top-down shooter Hotline Miami a whirl. Hotline Miami is a fantastic game. It's one of those where you say, oh, the soundtrack came with a free game? The soundtrack is unforgettable, the atmosphere is pleasantly unsettling, and the game is challenging. We play as both Jacket and Biker, who have different motivations for the carnage they leave in their wake, but we'll get to that in a moment. Jacket dons different masks that give him different powers during his rampage as we shoot, slash, and sometimes drill our way to the answers behind this captivating narrative. The mysteries are never ending, and the only way to find the answers we're looking for is through hundreds of armed mobsters. Well, let's not delay. Let that phone go to voicemail and let's rampage through the world of Hotline Miami. Spoiler warning, this video will include spoilers regarding the story of Hotline Miami. While even now I still don't fully grasp it, it's a great game, and if you want to experience the plot for yourself the first time, stop the video now. You have been warned. As always, if you enjoy this video, please be sure to like and subscribe, or even leave a comment as it really helps the channel out. Thank you so much. Now back to the video. The gameplay is simple, yet extremely difficult. The goal of each level is simple. You want to eliminate all the enemies on each floor to move on, and our methods to eliminate these enemies come in many different forms. We have different weapons ranging from pistols to swords to glass bottles to ARs. Each level requires a different strategy, and it almost works like a puzzle trying to figure out the best approach to getting through the level. There's typically multiple floors to each level that you can only progress through once you clear the prior floor, and by clearing all the floors you progress to the next level. Some levels can be lengthy and it's a grind to get through, especially after you've experienced 150 deaths on floor number 1, just to move on to floor number 2 and be stuck there for another 150 deaths. It feels so punishing, but ends up really not being that bad since you just respawn at the beginning of the floor and try a different method. I usually become a victim to that old saying about the definition of insanity though, as I frequently attempted to just bum rush through a rain of bullets and was swiftly corrected, only for me to try the same thing 20 more times. But my stupidity is my own fault. Don't hate the game, hate the player or whatever. Anyways, the levels as a whole are great. Before you get to all that bloodshed you're so excited for, hey, I'm not judging you, let's just not lie to ourselves. You have to start out at various different stores around town. We typically follow a formula of pick some sort of item up, talk to our friend Beard, then listen to our voicemail where we receive instructions for the location of the next level. These levels increase in difficulty rapidly, and I personally found the police station to be the hardest level as the final showdown here is stressful as you run between cover trying to avoid the rapid fire police officers in the middle of the room while getting to a good position to take some of them out. Even the first few levels are challenging initially, but after you become experienced enough, something just clicks and you can just steamroll through these. You learn pretty quick that actually being aggressive and quick is extremely effective, as even though the enemies attack fast, they're not as quick as you think, and usually they can't always outmaneuver you sprinting in for a melee hit. It's almost like being an actual violent vigilante, as getting the jump on the enemies and taking them out quickly is the most effective tactic sometimes, versus slowly picking them off one by one. It takes a bit of an adjustment to get the courage to sprint at all those armed guards head on, but hey, it's just a video game after all. I'm sure we all have a hard time reminding ourselves of that sometimes. As for our character, at least while we control Jacket, we have a host of different masks to choose from that all grant different abilities or powers, such as faster movement or making you into a murderous one-punch man. My favorite of these masks is definitely Tony, as I believe he is the most useful as he can quickly dispatch a large group of enemies if you employ an aggressive approach or a lure approach, since it only takes one punch from him to kill an enemy completely. For the most part, this was my most used mask, and although it was fun to experiment with all those different options, I always found my way back to my buddy Tony the Tiger. Kinda like my childhood in Frosted Flakes. As for the enemies, they come in a few different varieties. You have your standard unarmed grunt, melee weapon guys, gun wielding guys, dogs, and brutes that are basically just damage resistant large enemies. The most annoying are the dogs, as they are very fast and can be a bit hard to hit at times. Brutes can be the most dangerous for sure if they know your location, as it takes a few shots to bring them down and they move relatively quickly for their large size. The game is short enough that these enemies don't really get stale, as you'll be battling your frustration over your hundreds of deaths more so than the lack of boredom from a large enemy variety. The enemies are also extremely situational, as their placements and combinations mix up the encounters enough that you're pretty much always looking for another solution to the next difficult room. This is where one of the best strengths of the game comes into play, and that is the enemy AI. They aren't stupid, but more so they're realistic. If you make some noise, they're gonna come check it out. They patrol extremely erratically, and it's extremely hard to predict where the enemy is going to go. You might think you're camping out in your safe room waiting for the time to strike just for another enemy to come through a door you didn't even notice and shoot you from behind. This can cause a bunch of frustration, as just when you think you've planned out a good strategy to deal with a group, they end up not moving the same way they did before, and all your planning was basically for nothing. It's a satisfying challenge that is well balanced by the fact that respawning is so generous, and you don't really lose much progress, if any, upon death. In fact, retrying is a core gameplay mechanic, as the game is a skill-based puzzle essentially. Also throughout these levels, you gain points for the variety, speed, and brutality of your executions. Maybe this is what parents were talking about when they said video games make kids violent back in the day. Well, based on these points you receive a grade for each level, which can help you unlock a new mask. I found the easiest way to do this was taking things slow with the drill mask, as the drill gives really high points for your executions, but maybe that's the easy way out. Oh well, the game is challenging enough as it is. Another cool feature to rack up points is hitting enemies with doors. This puts enemies in a down state, but they'll get back up pretty quickly, so you'll want to do some of those aforementioned ground executions, and for a nearly pixel art style, these can be pretty graphic. Anything for that platinum trophy though, even if you do feel a bit bad about it afterwards. Speaking of which, there's one thing I do want to mention about when you complete a level. The music stops. That's right, it's just a disorienting sound akin to white noise that kind of snaps you out of your gaming trance. I would get so invested in taking out the enemies quickly, then when I finish and the music stops, I snap back to reality like Eminem, thinking, geez, look at these brutal executions I did. Even when enemies were crawling away from me, I was just worried about the points and didn't really care what my character did to them. Kinda makes you self-reflect a bit. Maybe that's an important theme of this game. Overall, the gameplay is fantastic. It's simple, yet extremely challenging, and while it provides more than its share of frustration, it also provides a satisfying feeling of accomplishment worth more than a participation trophy when you finally manage to beat a difficult level. The enemy AI is great and responsive, and overall, the game provides a great experience during its relatively short runtime. This is heavily complemented by the mysterious, yet strong story of the game. Okay, I'm gonna be honest here. I don't fully understand the story of this game, but I'm going to do my best to explain what I do understand, and maybe some people can help me out in the comments. For the first 15 levels, we play as a man named Jacket, who receives mysterious phone calls instructing him to go to a place and, well, take out the trash, exterminate vermin, and some other creative ways to tell Jacket who his target is. That's right, essentially the phone is telling him to unalive people where they instruct, and don't ask any questions about it. So being as we don't have any other instructions in the game, we follow suit. These locations tend to be filled with Russian gangsters, so at least you might feel like you're taking out bad people instead of innocents. This is heightened a bit when we rescue a woman from their grasp, who I don't even want to know what they were planning to do with, and she becomes our girlfriend. Every now and then we have these visions of 3 masked people, hinting at the future, but this only provides some confusion and mystery on your first playthrough. For now, we continue following instructions and things just get, well, weirder and weirder. We start talking to people we've taken out in previous levels, and nobody seems to bat an eye at all the carnage, bloodshed, and zombies around them. Weirdly enough, we run into another masked person, a biker, in a telephone building's headquarters with a lot of dead people. I mean, there is only one living person in the building, and it's the biker. Almost like someone else had answered their voicemail, and we are coming to the scene of the crime in the aftermath. We have an epic showdown with this biker that just results in more and more questions. Even weirder, Beard starts questioning what's really going on with all this carnage, until eventually, he's replaced by a creepy bald man who's very cold to us. We come home to our apartment only for the man to be sitting on our couch, and we find our girlfriend no longer alive. Jacket gets shot, but he doesn't die. The shooter encourages us to check the room across the hall, where we find ourselves in a hospital bed. This is where everything gets confusing. We find out Jacket has been in a coma for a few weeks, but is a prime suspect in an investigation. Uh-oh. Our girlfriend really has passed away based on dialogue from the cop, but now you question how much of the prior events was reality and how much was a coma dream considering all the weird things that were happening. It seems the consensus is, for the most part, everything actually did happen and that we were simply reliving the events in our coma. Of course, our eyes wide shut encounters with the masked trio, talking to zombies, and sadly, our only friend Beard, were all figments of our imagination. Well, there goes our only living remaining friend in the game. How sad. I guess this game is realistic because now we have no friends. Now as for our encounter with Biker, this is where I get a bit confused, but I'll come back to that. Moving on, we break out of the hospital and now we're really out for revenge. The police mentioned they had the man who ruined our life in custody, so of course our next step is assaulting the police station from the front door, guns blazing. We move through the station with ease. Well, not really, because this is the hardest level in the game, but it sounds cooler when I say it like that. Until we get the keys, unlock the cell, and finally take out the rat that took our girlfriend. I think you have the option to spare him, as he says he was just obeying the phone as well, but hey, we're already in this deep, and he took the only thing that really makes Jack a human, might as well get some revenge. We grab a police file, and that leads us to who we believe is the mastermind behind this whole thing. The game's a little wacky here, as we fight two purple panther cat things and a ninja-like Kill Bill girl, before we finally take out the man behind the desk, only to discover the phone is ringing for one last time. Oddly enough, the supposed mastermind behind the phone says he hates phones. Hold that thought. We head upstairs and take out a man in a wheelchair, then the game finishes with a smoke on the balcony. That is until we play as Biker for the next 4 chapters. Biker is trying to find out who is behind these phone calls and will take out anyone who gets in his way. Eventually, Biker heads to the call center headquarters, where we see the clash with Jacket, but in this case, Biker kills Jacket. This is where my confusion lies. I don't know which of these is real. One theory, as a result of some research online, tells me both are canon and there's a timeline split here, as both appear in the second game. Oh great, back to some Marvel movie antics. Look, I liked both characters, but when have timeline splits ever not complicated a series drastically? And we're doing this in the first entry of the series? Oh brother. Now the other theory that I like significantly more is that we have unreliable narrators. Weirdly enough, I've always enjoyed the idea of unreliable narrators in books and trying to figure out where they're being truthful and where we as an audience are being deceived. Think of Biker and Jacket as Holden Caulfield from Catcher in the Rye. Both claim they took the other out, but in reality they both escaped injured. I love this theory and we're going to go with this because, well, both appear in the next game and this is much less complicated. I love it. We'll just move on now for the sake of the video. Getting back on track here, after Biker takes out Jacket, he finds the real culprits of all the issues in the game, who are, funnily enough, the game developers. If you picked up the clues around the different levels, you can solve the password on their terminal to get the full ending. Basically, these two are members of an organization called 50 Blessings that are seeking to get rid of an American-Russian alliance. They're a group of American nationalists that believe the Russians are attempting to take over America, and as a result have plotted this whole elaborate scheme to get people to take out the Russian mobsters to rid America of what they view as the Russian oppression. Well, the game comes to a close with Biker eliminating these two leaders of the organization, where they tease that this is just the tip of the iceberg, setting up perfect sequel bait. Alright, I know that got a little complicated, but let's dive a little bit deeper. If you're anything like me, you've been asking yourself this whole video, why does Jacket do what the phone tells him? And you're probably mad at me for not addressing it earlier. Well, Jacket isn't exactly the most stable guy. The game implies that if you disobey, you are heavily threatened, so you're essentially forced into these acts. Well, at least that's the case for some of the other characters. In Jacket's case, well, we never get a clear explanation. It can be assumed that Jacket is definitely insane, and maybe the reason for his actions are that he's just violent and has no other real purpose. There's also some explanation in the second game, but I haven't played it yet, and don't want to get too deep into that. But there's still no concrete answer as far as I can tell. I'm going to assume that Jacket is just a psychopath that likes to inflict violence upon Russians, and saw this as a perfect opportunity. But you're more than welcome to form your own theory. One thing to note though is there are some examples that counter the theory that Jacket is just on a rampage, as we see him vomit after killing a non-Russian homeless man, and of course we see him rescue and build a relationship with the girl. So maybe he's only on a violent rampage against Russians and cops when they get in his way? I don't know. Let me know your theory in the comments. Moving on. So who was behind these calls? The man in the wheelchair at the end of Jacket's story is who Jacket believed was causing it. These are the Russian mob bosses, and if you're thinking, wait, that doesn't make sense, why would the Russian mob bosses ask Jacket to kill Russians? Then you deserve a cookie because you're exactly right. The old man mentions on the last call that he hates phones, which is our clue into the fact that Jacket is mistaken. These aren't the people behind the phone calls, but rather the heads of the Russians we've been destroying the whole game. Instead of getting revenge on whoever originated the phone calls, we're instead completing the work that they wanted Jacket to complete anyway, so really we're just doing their bidding. Jacket is mistaken, but either way, he seems satisfied at the end. Does this mean the police file was incorrect? Were the police in on the whole taking out the Russians thing? I'm really not sure, but I think maybe Jacket just misinterpreted the file, or he just wanted to take out the Russians since he's not their biggest fan. Let me know what you think in the comments. Moving on to Beard, our ever-present employee. We have a mystery on who this is and why he always shows up. Well, if you pay attention, you'll notice he's no longer present once we wake up from that coma. That is because Beard was only a figment of our imagination, and he is actually an old buddy of Jacket's. Beard is actually a reason why Jacket doesn't like the Russians, but that's something to discuss if I make a video on Hotline Miami 2. For now, unfortunately Beard is only a figment of Jacket's imagination, or rather a manifestation of his memory of an old friend. That means we're back to having no friends. Well, even Stevie Wonder can see Jacket has some issues. Maybe too many issues to work out with a therapist? I mean, he makes Hannibal Lecter look like a saint with all his massacres. Oddly enough though, you kind of find yourself rooting for him to evade the police and get his revenge, especially once your girlfriend is attacked. Maybe we see the good in Jacket when he rescues the girl, and seeing the only good thing in his life taken from him is just too far. Either way, you can look back and see he's a terrible person. But even still, we want to see his rampage through to the end. I think this is a huge strength of the game, and that the player leaves conflicted. Are we a terrible person for playing this game and helping Jacket commit horrible acts? Maybe the blows are softened since the graphics aren't super realistic, but hey, it's just a video game, right? Right? This is enforced by the idea I discussed earlier about how the music stops when you complete a level, and that really just kind of makes you sit with your actions. Gosh, I didn't expect an existential crisis from this game, but I'm kind of wondering my game choices now and if I'm making good decisions. Maybe Mom was right. While the ending might not be the most satisfying, it definitely sets the game up for a sequel to answer all these questions, and for now, that's just something we'll have to wait for in a later video. As a whole, Hotline Miami is a great game. It's mysterious and definitely doesn't answer every question, but it leaves the player wanting more. The gameplay is addicting and challenging, and even if you do feel a bit morally guilty for enjoying the carnage, it's an amazing video game. I highly recommend playing this gem and battling your frustrations to see it through to the end. Who knows, maybe you'll join me in Hotline Miami 2 one day as we get to the root of Jacket's complex, or maybe simple character arc. Thanks for watching. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed the video, please be sure to like and subscribe. Please let me know your theories on this mysterious game in the comments. Until next time.